Hey friendos, it's DW. Today I want to talk about game design toolbox and my no-cost toolbox that I use for game design and the 4 steps that I follow that reflect inside of that toolbox. So let's get her going. Hey friendos, it's DW here. It's been another week of Car Scientist, another week of game design, and actually no game development in all. I've actually been focusing exclusively on Car Scientist game design, and I thought I'd take a minute to share my game design toolbox, mainly because it's something that I leverage a lot, and it's not like the tools I normally use because I'm a technologist and developer at heart. And so the fact that I kind of use this toolbox is kind of unique, and I thought I'd share it with you. And especially because the idea that I always get caught up in the idea that I need to buy a new tool. It's a good crutch for me to kind of focus in on the things I don't have, but meanwhile, that's just an excuse to not work on the game, and game design is outside of my comfort zone. So this is a no-cost solution. And on top of that, it actually reflects the 4 sort of major steps I do with game design and generally just idea development. For myself, it's nothing professional or expertise or something like that, but just kind of my system that works, and my toolbox reflects what that actually does. So my 4 steps that I follow when I'm doing game design, and just general idea design, but game design especially, is the first thing I do is a brain dump. Just kind of get the ideas out there. Writers do this. I've heard the term free flow, or the idea of just get it out and just keep it going and just get what you can out. And just these ideas are where I start. This just kind of, it could be garbage, it could be something, but when it's something that comes into my head, I find a way to get it out. The second one is I refine that idea. I go through, I sift away and filter away a lot of the garbage, but I also spend that time to actually review and reflect on what I've written down. But that refinement step is pretty critical, and I take my ideas and kind of flesh them out a little bit more. And if I really think the idea is worth investigating, I sketch it out. I came from a sort of a informal user experience development background. Before when UX was a new buzzword in the industry in application development. Now we have real user experience people doing this for a living, which is way better. But that being said, sketching things out to get my visualization out there helps, and it also helps me share the idea a little bit better than through my weird, garbagey notes that only mean something to me. And the 4th step is obviously to prototype. And I prototype the idea out and actually make it feel a little bit how I think it should feel, and actually start experimenting with the data a little bit if there's any data, and kind of work around that. But the key thing to remember out of all this is none of these are coding tools, none of these are technologist tools or developer tools, which is my comfort zone. I intentionally did that to keep me out of that toolkit or my development mindset so that I can focus in on design, and I'm getting better at it. And so to do my brain dump, the first tool I have, and this is why it's a no-cost solution, is it's a notebook. Now, technically speaking, a notebook does cost something, but you can find a notebook or a pad of paper or whatever, a series of napkins. It doesn't matter, but there's a way to find this. For me, I always have these notebooks laying around, and that I've collected at conferences over the years, and just weird things like that. And so I take one of them, and this is one I actually have it with me right now, and I have it with me everywhere I go. And it's on the bedside table everywhere. And the idea is that I take a pencil, specifically a pencil, and jot down whatever idea I have. Sometimes it's when I'm watching some YouTube videos, sometimes it's just when I'm sitting at work or having lunch or on a walk, but I'll stop and actually write the idea down or sketch out an idea. And if you actually look inside the notebook, it just looks like nonsense to most people. I try to give it some organization, but ultimately it's a bunch of brain dumps into here, some sketches and some ideas, and this is me fleshing out Car Scientist specifically. But that's kind of what I do. That's all I do, is I just flow everything into there, and then I spend some time later refining it. And that's step 2. And step 2 is where we get a little bit more digital. And I have a reason for that. Now, I don't get into the code here, but actually I open up the most generic of all things, which is not generic, but rather just OneNote. I use OneNote, or a note-taking program. There's Evernote, there's a bunch of them, but for me, I use OneNote because it's what I know, and I actually like how OneNote feels. And I like how it organizes into a sort of informal game design document. That's kind of the intent. But I take the ideas from the notebook. Sometimes I'll take an actual picture of the page and drag it over into OneNote, and then start to flesh out the ideas a little bit more inside of OneNote, and it becomes this informal sort of GDD or game design document for my game. I'm not really quite there yet. I'm starting to get to that point now with Car Scientist after this last week. A lot of ups and downs and stuff like that, but I do spend that time refining it, and it does make a huge difference in my thought process. Now, when I have my ideas, I have like one or two ideas I want to actually see a little bit better, because usually my OneNote stuff is just text. I move to PowerPoint. Now, PowerPoint is my friend. It's been my long friend in my career since university. And I'll tell you what, PowerPoint can do anything you need it to do for a visual presentation. It's not perfect. You can do a lot of polishing stuff. This is not about that. This is about just getting the idea into a digital format for starters, but also giving me the ability to share this with people. PowerPoint gives you the ability to generate video. It gives you the ability to narrate. It gives you the ability to record timings. It gives you just the plain simple idea of like, I can put this on a laptop and show it at somewhere. And PowerPoint is, I would say I'm more of an above average user of PowerPoint, if not a power user of it. But the things I do that aren't quantum mechanics here, like it's just putting buttons and drawing pictures with shapes inside of PowerPoint, just the default out of the box stuff, the occasional clip art, or I'll take something off the internet, but it's informal, sketchy garbage to get a feel for what is in my head out to people, so it ends up being a talking point, very much what PowerPoint's meant for, in the slide deck. Now, I will take it a step further with the animation sometimes and try to show you what the gameplay looks like when it flows around, like, click on arrows and show some stuff like that. But that's kind of how that works for gameplay, but I don't really go too deep into it usually, because it's a lot of effort for something that is meant to be sort of throwaway eventually. And that's where I move into Excel. Now, Excel is where I start tinkering with the sort of math model of the game, or the maths. You want to put it that way. Ralph Koster, a lot of game designers I hear on podcasts use Excel for prototyping, for testing, for all kinds of stuff. That's easy. You got the formulas, you've got a lot of simulation things. You can do a little bit of like statistical coding on it. It's an amazing tool, is what it comes down to. And for me, it's really about, can I get all the data into a single spot? What data do I need, and how does it link together? And can I build sort of a raw prototype out of Excel? And this is the new thing for me. I'm trying to use this a little bit more, because I noticed one of the challenges I have with my game design is that I end up kind of jumping into it too early. And if there's a data element, locations or randomness or any of that, I don't really experiment enough with it. But Excel gives you all those tools in a really friendly, easy to port around and move around format. And now you might be wondering, hey, DW, this is a free toolkit. This is Office 365, or this is Office. I got to pay for Office. This is supposed to be free. And you're right, I actually pay for an Office suite. I use it all the time, so I pay for it. It's not overly expensive. I think it's like $60 a year for the personal edition or something like that. It's not crazy, but you're right. I did say no cost. And to point this out, if I go to the next one, you get all this stuff for free with a Microsoft account, right? Like, you sign up for an Outlook.com or a OneDrive account or a Microsoft account. Your apps have, you can see here, it has OneDrive, it has, so for backing stuff up, it has OneNote, Excel, and PowerPoint. And whether you use the mobile apps or it doesn't come with the desktop applications, but you can do a lot with the browser-based apps anyway. I know this from my day job in my real life. Not my side hustle, but you can do a lot with this, and I guarantee you I sit inside these web apps a lot more, even with the desktop app at my disposal. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure, I can't confirm it right now, but like, I can log into my Windows account, my Microsoft account version, on the Android version as well. So I'm using it on my phone, I'm using it on the browser, I'm using it on desktop when I pay for it. But I mean, between the browser and the phone stuff, you're covered with this toolkit, and it gives you what you need. Like, this isn't going to be the end game. You can flesh it out to that point and make it playable. Like, you can get into that level if that's your jam. But for me, it's just having the tools at my disposal so I can flesh out the gameplay and the gameplay loops and how this all works together. And not using a coding tool set or a developer's tool set like Visual Studio or a coding environment or Godot or Unreal or Unity, staying away from that stuff has helped me dramatically in terms of fleshing out the idea so that when I do sit down to code, I'm quick. Because the coding is the easy part for me. The hard part is actually getting the requirement figured out beforehand, and that's something that code isn't going to be able to figure out for me. It's something I have to do on paper and with people, and these tools kind of make that possible. And that is actually my last slide. That is the end of it. So this week was really a car scientist game design week. I think next week is going to be a little bit more fleshing it out, hoping to share some stuff on where that's going in the meantime. But as usual, follow me or subscribe. Follow me on social media if you want to kind of see what I'm brain dumping out onto the Twitters and then the Instagrams and whatnot. On top of that, if you have any feedback about things you'd like to see or want me to talk about in terms of my process or my game design stuff or game development stuff, feel free to drop some comments in there. And if you want to click that subscribe button, I'm keeping that going. So thanks again for tuning in, and have yourself a pleasant day and or evening. Take care.